I'd like to welcome everyone and remind everyone that meeting participants be advised that the meeting is to be recorded for public access broadcast. With that, I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. And do I have an adoption of the agenda? Moved by Councillor Glantz, seconded by Councillor Dykstra. Any questions to the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. Conflict of interest declarations, have been filled out. Adoption of the minutes, regular council meeting from January the 9th, 2023. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes?
So
Moved by Councillor Thorne, seconded by Councillor Dykstra. Any questions to the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. Adoption of the minutes for committee of the whole meeting in January the 30th, 2023. So moved by Councillor Thorne, seconded by Councillor Glant. Any questions to the motion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. Cause consent agenda items, are there any questions on the consent agenda? And moving on to number 6.
Oh, I have to move that.
Sorry.
I move that council adopt the consent agenda of February 13th, 2023.
One second.
Any questions to the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried.
That was lovely.
Public administrative presentation, public and administrative presentations. Nothing to present. Number 7, reports and recommendation from committees and private meetings.
We are pumping through the agenda.
Number 1, ratification expense policy.
I'll speak to that one quickly. So this is the first time that we have something that's moved from a committee of the whole into a regular public meeting. And so this was discussed at our January 30th meeting, and it's the expense policy, which have 2 primary modifications since it was discussed at committee of the whole and is now on the table for approval. So the 2 main changes is the correction or change to the model of mileage that we're going to use, which is based on the Service Commission's model, which is a federal model that's updated quarterly, which then also removes the need to have it adjusted once a year, which was a section that was in the draft that came to committee of the whole and was since removed. And the second piece is based on the discussion to add verbiage around having a phone expense as optional for elected officials. So those are the 2 primary changes that were made. And as we discussed at committee of the whole, this policy is a combination of a few former policies of the village and some additions based on some just formalizing some processes. So with that, motion and then questions on the matter.
I'll move.
Moved by Councillor Glant, seconded by Councillor Vitore. Questions to the motion? No questions to the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. Reports from the administration.
First one is appointment of building inspectors. Diane, do you want to speak to as to why we're doing this and what this means?
Okay, so, as per the Local Governance Act, each municipality in the Building Code Administration Act, municipalities have to actually appoint their building inspectors. And so the resolution must be read exactly as is, and these are the names that the Southeast Regional Service Commission, have put forth for building inspectors. Now, they have multiple ones. In the past, we only did 1 or 2, but this allows for vacations and people let's say following up or whatever, or more people being, you won't necessarily have all of them, but this allows for it in case one's out, but the other ones can fill in. So we basically need this resolution. If somebody,
I can read that.
Yeah.
Wait, can I?
no.
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 I can read it.
You can read it. You can read it.
So I move that whereas the province of New Brunswick has repealed all regulations related to building standards, permits, and inspections from the Community Planning Act and adopted them under the Building Code Administrative Act. And whereas Hanno Derrickson, Denis Fernet, Samuel Fernet, Patrick Gadet, Martin Picot, Adrian Robichaud, and Bill Wright have been accepted by the Southeast Regional Service Commission as building inspectors. Be it resolved that the municipal council of Salisbury appoint the above named inspectors as building inspectors for the municipality of Salisbury under section 71 of the Local Governance Act. Be it further resolved that the municipality of Salisbury hereby gives authority to the building inspectors to issue orders and to lay information for offenses under section 14 of the Building Code Administration Act.
So moved by Councillor Roblina, seconded by Councillor Glant. Questions to the motion?
Does that allow for expansion in the future,
Of building inspectors? It would be
Well,
whenever
then-
they have high
then
people
They
hired.
would
They
appoint
tell
more
us.
as they find more resources.
Yeah. So hypothetically, next week, if all the building inspectors left, they would give us another list once they hired. We'd have to do the same thing.
Yeah, we did this last year.
Yeah, and I should have mentioned, because we're a town now, it has to be reappointed
Oh.
as the town.
Just like when we reappoint, it's basically the equivalent of appointing the officers that we had to do in the first meeting in January. It's the same thing. It's just that our building inspection services are through the commission, so we have to get the list from them. And then they'll look for this motion, and then every time they hire people, they'll send us the same thing, and we'll do it. as needed.
do we have any opportunity to have anyone else, or this is just who we're, but that's just the reality?
In what sense? Like for building inspection services?
Yes.
So it's part of right now our services with the commission. We're mandated to have the services. I don't know, like some municipalities have their own building inspector, depends on things like need, that sort of thing. Obviously now, like you'll see in the start, we haven't been through a full, well, I guess we have now, but not enough time to have the reports, but we'll get the reports monthly for the overall new entity. So then we can determine council can determine as we go through if there's a need to explore or a benefit to explore having our own, but for now, we go through the commission, but it's not to say that's the permanent.
For this year, it makes sense to status quo, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
if
don't have
we don't
enough
like it in
to-
the future, then
Yeah.
recourse.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will add that there are some municipalities who did start with their own, and they are now back with the commission, because it gives you that cool.
And also it's very expensive.
I was gonna say, probably expensive to have somebody if you don't have an awful lot of activity going on.
No questions to the motion, additional questions to the motion? All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. Name change of municipality, line of credit, CIBC.
And I'll speak to that. So again, because we are now a town and we are changing the name legally to Salisbury, we have to redo our line of credits, visas, and along with the bank accounts and that sort of thing. The line of credit, and I'll just kind of explain, we put a line of credit in a few years ago when we had several projects going on at once. This is not interim financing. This is strictly to cover in case we get down on our bills and we can pay our bills before the payments come in. So a lot of our larger, most of the grants, you have to pay up front and then the grants come in afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
So we had 3 or 4 grants and a fire truck and a couple things all coming in at once and nothing to kind of cover in case we needed to pay the power bill. So this is basically just put in place in case. We've never used it. It's there as a bunker or safety net, yeah. That would be the same amount as we did before. We didn't up it because we didn't have to use it. The credit card application, we have asked for it to be increased because there's a lot of times in the summer, especially when things are really busy. We have a hard time keeping up with the credit cards for deposits and everything else. So we've asked to increase, so that would also require a motion if you wanted to increase it. And then also the signing authority, we've already, at a last January 9th meeting, we talked about adding the CAO as a second person, and so we've just suggested or recommend that maybe we have also the deputy mayor. And it has to be 1 staff, 1 council member. It can't be 2 staff. So it's either Oster or myself and the mayor currently, but that way will give us another person in case we need it.
We haven't gone through with mine yet, that's the other thing.
No, but that'll all be done. Yeah, that motion's been done, but yeah,
So 3 separate motions here,
yes.
is what we're looking for? Okay. I can do the first one. I move that the municipality of Salisbury request from CIBC a revolving line of credit in the amount of $50,000.
Moved by Councillor Thorne, seconded by Councillor Glant. Questions to the motion?
With some of the upcoming spending in terms of building the new fire station and the new fire truck bumper, is 50,000 enough of a buffer for any building overruns?
Again, this is not interim financing. Municipalities have to go to the municipal capital borrowing board to borrow funding. So, it's kind of confusing,
I
yeah.
understand.
So we would literally have to go get interim financing for however much we need in the interim until we get the money from municipal capital burn board, again, once the fire truck is actually received.
Yeah.
This is strictly just kind of helping
More
make
our
sure
day-to-day operating.
day-to-day
Big
power
budgets.
bills can be paid, that if we get close to the bottom, we do have a little bit of a buffer.
So that being said, in terms of the trackless and any of the repair costs associated with something like that or a
Mhm.
truck that would to be having issues, would that be also as part of that 50,000? And would that also take into account the higher costs of today?
Again, I mean, this would cover it until the next budget check comes in monthly. So it's kind of just.
So for, it's a month,
Keep us
this
afloat.
is a monthly,
Yeah.
okay.
It's just an
A
operating.
fire truck
Yeah.
that's $250,000
It's
is,
your
yeah, we
capital.
need a lot more money than,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Yeah. So that would be
Good.
where we get interfinancing through the bank again, which we need another motion, and there's requirements as to how much you can actually borrow as interim financing as well.
For a village town, or is it,
Yeah.
is it all?
It's got to
different
do with tax base and things like that, so.
for- Okay.
No additional questions to the motion. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried.
So I move that the municipality of Salisbury request an increase of the CIBC Visa credit limit to 30,000.
Seconded.
By Councillor Colwell, seconded by Councillor Thorne. Questions to the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried.
I'll move that council authorize the clerk/treasurer to add the deputy mayor Phyllis Bannister as an additional signing authority for the municipality of Salisbury on all municipal bank accounts.
Seconded.
So moved by Councillor Molina, seconded by Councillor Thorne. Questions to the motion?
I have a question. Would we have to change that every year, or would Phyllis be able to remain through the
Named or
term?
position?
Yeah.
No, but what I'm saying is, like,
Yeah, so if we change the motion to just say the name.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the deputy mayor, it would be up to council who they want to be that second person. Do they want
I'm
the
still
deputy
confused.
mayor, or do they just want another counselor?
so next year, we vote for a new deputy mayor.
Yeah.
Could be Phyllis again, but
Yeah.
if not, we have to redo that motion
Yes.
again, right?
Yeah.
But if we put just,
Deputy mayor.
or not deputy mayor, if we put just Phyllis Bannister, even if she's not deputy mayor next year and is
Mhm.
a
Right.
board counselor,
And
again,
if
she could
in the
remain.
bylaw, it would say it needs to be the mayor, deputy mayor, I think, but we maybe don't have that bylaw.
In our procurement policy, it does stipulate if there's two, then it would go to the subsequent, but it's
Okay.
nothing that can't be changed, like it's
Yeah.
nothing that, but the bank will want a name, that's the main thing.
Yeah,
that-
that was-
Exactly, but they need to see the name in the motion.
Yeah,
and
they,
yeah.
the bank
Yeah.
did that.
Is it difficult to do with the bank, or is it just standard
Let's do another motion, and
and then it's
it's
done?
paperwork and having to.
It's
go
an
back.
annoyance is what.
Yeah,
I was gonna
it
say,
is.
nothing with the bank is easy.
Yeah.
Time.
Time, and like I said, it's the paperwork, a lot of times,
Do we want
everybody
to
has to be there at the
the
same
position
time.
and just make
So-
Phyllis?
Oh my
I
God.
don't.
Yeah, it took about 2 months the last time we did a name change.
I would go with this, and then you guys can come up with a recommendation for the next time, to see
Yeah.
if there's an easier way to do it.
The bank is usually pretty picky, that's
Yeah.
the
Okay,
challenge.
then I'm comfortable just leaving it as is.
No additional questions to the motion. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. Three.
Motion's there, yeah, so 8:23.
Fireworks Community Days 2023.
So for those of you who weren't here last year, we'll explain a little bit. So last year was the first time that we had done fireworks in many, many, many years. The bylaw for the fire department states that we can't have fireworks unless council and the chief have given their blessing. So last year, we received council's go-ahead and as well as the chief's. We did a bunch of other stuff as well to just be safe. We talked to our insurance company, went through our lawyers. Salisbury Fire and Rescue helped us along with the actual company that does it. We hire a company that does it with the insurance, but the fire department's helped as well. Got permissions from the school because it was on their property. We also went door to door. with notices to the people in the general area, just to warn them that this is the night it's gonna happen and it was gonna take place. As far as I'm aware, it went very well. We didn't have any
Yeah.
issues.
Got very positive feedback, particularly from the residents that that are, you know, students or whoever went door to door and did that.
Yeah.
Very positive feedback, around the proactive nature of that.
Yeah, it was advertised and there was notices and, such, but again, because we're still using the same bylaw, we require this permission again from council to, allow us to go ahead with planning for it for again this year. Also, the fire department have sent people or are already sending people Yeah, to get some education on how to like do fireworks, so.
Okay, so motion, I'll move that Salisbury go ahead with a fireworks show on August 18th, 2023 as part of the 2023 Community Days, following all recommendations from the municipality's insurance provider and dependent on provincial burn ban regulations. So moved.
Moved by Councilor Thorne, seconded by Councilor Roblinas. Questions to the motion? I do, sorry, go ahead.
I was just wondering about stipulating the date.
Yeah.
Should we just scratch the date and just say as part of
As
community
part of
days?
Community Days 2023, only because if it rained that evening, is there a?
Yeah, that's
It's like
true.
rain dates or if we,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay amending that.
I don't know, but I would say we remove it just to be sure.
You can remove it to be sure, yeah.
Yeah, just to be safe.
Okay.
We have it booked for that day, but that's just in case, I
Oh,
would
and
say.
that's Leslie's birthday, so I'd really like to tell her the fireworks are for her, so.
You get some bonus points.
Yeah, exactly. Mom of the year.
So remove the date from the motion.
Yeah. Yeah, any questions?
Motion.
It'll be a second.
Okay, any-
would there be, maybe it's a bigger discussion on adjusting the bylaw that's
Yeah.
restricts them anyway?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
when we redo the bylaws, that's one of the ones that you can discuss during
Okay.
that time and
Amend or omit.
give
Yeah.
that option in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just last time, like when we were doing it, we did them in August and it was, we had to get a motion and we had to work very fast. Like I think it was in a special meeting, I think, yeah. To make sure that it happened on time. So ultimately, this gives us the authorization. Hypothetically, the bylaw could not exist by August for all that it's
Yeah.
worth, but it's just to make sure that
Yeah.
it's done. We know that we're checking the boxes nice and early, and don't have to worry about will council authorize us? And then we go through all the planning and then council says no. So that's all it's for.
Any additional questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. Award of RFP Sols 2023-04 Recreation Master Plan.
I'll speak to this one before we go to the motion on the floor. So the CRF has a little bit of background, but in essence, administration is recommending that we proceed with the creation of a recreation master plan, especially within the realities of the new entity and the new municipal boundaries. There's a lot of wants and a lot of needs, obviously, when it comes to things like recreation. So this is our attempt at trying to formalize a plan forward that puts things on paper as to where we need to go and how we'll get there as well, and ensures that residents are engaged through the process. So the approach to a recreation master plan is to look at a lot of different things. So it looks at access to recreation, it looks at capital assets for recreation, it looks at programming from a recreation and wellness perspective. So it looks at those things from an overarching perspective. It takes into account growth and regional growth, population growth, what exists around us, what are the gaps that we could fill, revenue opportunities, all of these different models and things that come into play. And so we received 3 submissions from 4 that were invited to bid on the project, all of which were very, very close in price. So they were evaluated on the basis of a number of different requirements that we stipulated in the RFP. So administration's recommending moving forward with Trace, the firm out of Moncton, at a cost of $33,585 and change, tax inclusive, which will be completed bearing any significant changes or roadblocks or consultation processes would be completed this year. And the reason it's coming to council, you may note that that number, tax exclusive, would be under the CAO's authorization, is because we had proposed a $30,000 amount in the budget, which would have pretty much covered us. but it was reduced by the facilitator. So you'll also note in the CRF that this would technically be considered now an unbudgeted expense. So there's two lines, additional lines that we're proposing being used for this project, which will make a little bit more sense when we come hopefully in the committee of the whole meeting this month to show where some of those lines where we're recommending using them on based on the fact that we have a little bit more understanding of our budget. So with that, that's my my intro on that, and then motion and questions on the motion on the floor.
I can do this one. I move that council authorize administration to retain Trace with a dollar value of $33,585.75 for the purposes of executing RFP Sols 2023-04 and the completion of a recreation master plan. So moved.
So moved by Councillor Thorne,
I'll
by
second it.
Councillor Bauk, Deputy Mayor Bannister. Questions to the motion?
I have a question. I noticed, when I was reading this, that you mentioned, that would include things like ATVs and snowmobiles. Are we gonna incorporate the bylaw that never got done into this plan so that we can?
Good question. So the firm, actually, that was the only firm out of the other ones that that included that. And we mentioned that in the CRF because within the context of the evaluation, this firm in particular showed a very good understanding of the local governance reform process and the importance of approaching recreation on an individual community basis. So sometimes you get, and not to say the other firms would have done this, but you get copy and paste for things like these master plans. And so that was something that stood out to us. So that would be an opportunity certainly to consider that. I think given the sensitivities around that one, that still warrants its own kind of consultation process and its own approach, which is still on the radar, of course, but it will look at things. The last piece of the recreation master plan will be the either drafting or recommendation to eventually draft, whether it's policies or bylaws, reciprocal agreements, those sorts of things, but look at all those things. So right now, Salisbury has a reciprocal with Three Rivers, for instance. And so the recreation master plan will look at things like that. What's in place, what should be in place, what shouldn't be in place. And so it will consider things like that. It will probably consider things like when we consider the ATV trail proper, how can we make sure from a recreation perspective that it's used by everyone? Like it'll look at those types of things. But the reason we mentioned that is because it recognized that there's a different approach that you would take in a major city versus a rural community. But on the specific bylaw, I would say it's probably going to come up in those conversations and they'll probably have a recommendation on it from a kind of principle perspective. This is where we think we should go. But I would still, from the municipality's perspective, still treat them as two separate projects.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me, but it will be helpful to have
Absolutely.
a consultant like this that has presumably experience in other areas to be able to provide us with some feedback.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
I think this is fantastic.
I'm just curious, is there an existing recreational master plan?
For Salisbury?
Yes.
No. So there's a few things that are similar that don't look at everything overarching. So the Service Commission did one in 2017 that has limited kind of input Salisbury specific. The former village had a trail network drafted, which is the former kind of to try to connect the trails within the former village. That was also drafted. I don't think ever approved, but drafted. And then the other piece that was done in 2021 was the parks assessment, which is like playgrounds proper. So like when you should invest in benches and slides and that sort of thing, but nothing from the former village within the scope of an overall recreation master plan.
So is the goal of this to try to unify everything? Is there a direction in particular that's being set by this, or is that by us, or what's the story?
A couple kind of elements of that. One is that from a municipal reform perspective, two things for that. One, there's new boundaries that we need to look at. So there will be even things from like land that's under the province's ownership right now that may make sense for us to, that's the equivalent of land for public purpose that the province has. That may make sense for us to say, we have a recreation master plan that says we need XYZ. That piece of land will be perfect for that, and then enter into negotiations with them. It looks at things like land. The second is that the Service Commission has a new mandated service of regional recreation infrastructure. And so for us, we want to be able to make sure that we can say, when those conversations happen, we have a formal plan that says that it wouldn't be in our best interest to pay for whatever that may be. And we don't know exactly what that will look like, but similar to the economic development plan, we want to get ahead of that to make sure we have something on paper. So hypothetically, if the Service Commission says the area needs XYZ from a recreation infrastructure perspective, we could say, well, this is a perfect spot for it and it should be in Salisbury, that sort of thing. The second element is that it will look at also programming. So we need to figure out from a new entity perspective, how can we make sure we're reaching the new community from a programming perspective too, with what we're currently offering.
So having said that, does that also take into consideration the, not so much the internal area of the new town, but also what services Moncton are providing, what services Sussex is providing, like,
It looks at,
not creating redundancy or?
yeah, it will do that. This is also the same consultant that did the service commissions in 2017. I'll add that too. So they do have a historical kind of background. They're also the consultant that just finished the city's recreation master. Actually, I don't know if they quite finished it, but they was working on it in July when I left. But they have a good understanding from doing similar projects, but within they'll look regionally. So there's basically a formula or a model to say that within a certain distance and or within a certain population kind of area, you should have XYZ pickleball courts, you should have XYZ baseball fields. So it'll look at the assets that exist potentially beyond what exists in the municipal boundaries proper.
Based on whose interpretation do those, that set amount of stuff per capita is needed?
It's the consultant in consultation with the community. So council will have an input on that. They have stakeholders that will have input on that. And then there's also from an urban planning perspective, best practices that they'll pull into that too.
Okay.
Do the funds that are being pulled from the other budgets, do they leave us tight on those other ones or?
No. No, there's one, there's one that the facilitator reduced, so that one is budgeted for that, it's just not enough. The second is an addition from the facilitator that was not requested, that we don't have a planned spend for. And then the rest is another line that we don't have a planned spend for right now, so we're pulling it from there. And we're hoping to come hopefully in the February committee of the whole meeting with not only these budget lines, but also some others to say these are things that that don't have budgeted uses. This is where we're recommending.
So you'll
using.
just like budget transfer them to
Yeah.
the other
Yeah.
ones?
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thanks. Good job.
Additional questions, Morgan? No additional questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. Number 9, bylaws.
That's it today.
Okay. Number 10, closed session, contractual, legal, financial. I have a motion to go into close.
I'll move we go closed.
Seconded.
Moved by Councillor Leda, seconded by Councillor Thorne. Council? Do I have a motion to return back into council? So moved by Councillor Thorne, seconded by Councillor Vittori. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. Next item on the agenda is mayor and councillor statements and inquiries. Does anybody have anything to bring forward?
Can I share some positives about our basketball community?
Yeah.
We have our senior girls hosting sectionals next week or this coming weekend at noon, which is a big deal because if they win sectionals, they get to go to Harbor Station and play in the top 12. Which is
If they win this weekend, they go to Harbor Station?
they win this weekend in Harbor Station.
Thanks.
They're gonna play the winner between, I think, St. Stephen and RNS. So they play Friday night here and then the winner moves on. It's like that ultimate elimination or whatever that,
So noon hour Friday,
12 on Saturday.
Saturday? okay.
12 o'clock on Saturday, so it's a big deal for our community
Oh,
to make it to that level because this is like
They've never made it to Harbor Station before.
never, no. Anyway,
Congratulations.
Coach Kidney's pretty good. He's pushing them.
Coach Kidney is pushing them.
Anything else?
We have an event on the 20th, right?
We do. We
Here,
have,
we should maybe mention that.
yeah, so horse sleigh rides and beaver tails and hot chocolate and kids games and
Sliding it through snow and
riding
rain.
in the snow.
We must be able to make snow by now.
We should at this point,
Right.
and ice.
With the
We still don't have Christmas lights.
But yes, on the 20th, back island.
Okay, and The next item is notice of motions and resolutions.
Or none on the agenda.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Every hand goes up.
Everybody.
Councilor Horn, second, Councilor Dykstra, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Right.